welcome to Sports Time with Chris. I'm your host, Chris, and today I'll be talking about the 49ers' embarrassing snowball loss to the Buffalo Bills. It was really that. It was a snowball. Things just piled up and kept on rolling, and it had the snowball effect, literally. This is the second week in a row where we saw this team look completely unprepared for cold weather conditions. And this week was a little bit different because there was quite a bit of snow on the ground and it snowed a little bit in the game. Not a crazy amount. I mean, there was more on the floor, on the grass, but it seemed like during the game the snow wasn't coming down too much, at least from what it looked like on TV. But it looked like this team just didn't have anything prepared. The game plan looked just nothing. There was nothing that went well in a bad weather condition game. There were quite a few penalties on the 49ers, which when it comes to discipline, that all starts from the head coach. And we've seen this team have discipline issues all year long, and it's knocked them out of games. And in this game, it could have made all the difference, honestly. It is so crazy how just a few plays here and there have impacted this 49ers season, game in and game out. Really, just a few plays have changed the outcomes for the 49ers from wins to losses. Now, in this game, I think the Bills, even if the Niners hadn't shot themselves in the foot as many times as they did, the Bills still would have eventually pulled away at the end of the game, partially because they are a really good team, and also the 49ers defense and offense have been completely horrible in the fourth quarter. So even if there weren't as many, what were there, 3 fumbles? I think 3 fumbles in this game, at least that I'm remembering off the top of my head. There's Brock, Juice, and Debo. Despite some of those things, I don't know. The Niners could have kept it even closer than it actually was. But we've been saying that for each game. It's like every week, they're just a couple plays away from this game being a win. And I think that's really been the stark difference between this year's team and last year's, where last year's team, whenever they won, it's not that they were a few plays away, it was that they were many plays away, and they beat their opponents because they made all those plays. And this year, they're a couple plays away from, turning losses into wins. And, where does that all start? To me, it's the head coach. And I'm probably going to sound like a broken record for saying it, but when you have injuries, when you have a bunch of guys go down, this is the NFL. And if you have properly built your team, losing a few guys here and there sucks. It makes it a little bit more difficult, but it is still more than possible to go out and win games and be effective. And we've seen teams do that all this season. The Chiefs have had many injuries. The Lions, their whole defense has been placed on injured reserve or have been injured at some point this year. They lost Aiden Hutchinson, who was potentially on his way to winning Defensive Player of the Year. They're still out there dominating. It's not, I think this is where you really start to see the effects of how this roster has been constructed start to wear thin on this team because it's very top heavy. You lose your top guys and all of a sudden the guys behind them are just nowhere near as effective. And partially, part of that I have to believe is the lack of developing younger players by this coaching staff. It seems like each year rookies are brought onto the team and they're forced to sit while they learn, and they kind of just sit. And it's not especially offensively, this isn't a system where you can come in and learn it in an off season. Shanahan has said that a lot of times guys just aren't ready and it takes them a long time to learn the playbook. And to me, that is a flawed system. That is, that's where Shanahan's system is really, really flawed. Maybe it's too intricate. Maybe it is a little bit too detailed. And when it works, sure, but teams have been starting to figure that out defensively too. And all of a sudden you have injuries go down, or you have guys go down to injury and they haven't learned the playbook. It's too difficult. They start making mistakes and it doesn't seem like there's been any way to simplify what this team does. And then defensively, there have been quite a few injuries as well, and young guys have had to step in. Now, some of them have played great. Mustafa has been really good. Renardo Green, Evan Anderson has been an undrafted rookie surprise. And that's also where, a guy like Nick Sorensen is going to struggle, I think, is with younger players who he has to plug into the system. Because just like the offense, the defense has run the same system for the last 7 years. They have the 49ers system on defense, the 49ers defense. And I think teams have started to figure that out as well. And then when you have the turnover at defensive coordinator like the Niners have had, now Robert Saleh was hired as a head coach, D'Amico was hired as a head coach, but Steve Wilkes was fired. And so this is the team's, I touched on this last week, this is the team's fourth defensive coordinator in 4 or 5 seasons. It's the same defense, sure, but there's going to be some level of drop off when that happens. You can run the exact same system, but you have different defensive coordinators who call games differently. They game plan differently. They may teach the defense differently. And I think we've seen the effects of that this season as well, where instead of going out and hiring a solid defensive coordinator, someone who's been established in the league, the Niners hired internally, and I know Shanahan wants to do that as much as possible and promote his own guys, but sometimes you need an outside perspective, and I think that's why they brought in Brandon Staley, and that has been a failed experiment so far. Anyway, the Buffalo Bills game was just a really, really good football team, showing what a really, really good football team does. 2 teams who shoot themselves in the foot and are playing below average. That's what the Niners have been this season. They were not prepared at all for the weather conditions. They didn't have a good game plan for it. They shot themselves in the foot multiple times. They're all pro players, fumbled the ball, gave it away. Defensively, they still couldn't tackle. And then Josh Allen is just an amazing football player. I couldn't help but feel, man, when they had that touchdown where he threw the quick slant to Amari Cooper and he pitched it back to Allen and Allen ran in, that was just a classic snow game football play. And that team's a lot of fun to watch. That's a team I wouldn't mind seeing in this year's Super Bowl. I think they've been on the doorstep so many times, and this could be finally their year. And the Niners need a miracle to make it to the playoffs, and so I think it's time for them to take a step back, retool, and come back next season. Brock Purdy, his season has been nowhere near where it was last year, and I still believe in him. I think he is a franchise quarterback for this team. Honestly, I really do. And he does have some flaws, though, that I think we need to see cleaned up. And I have been wondering this season if something has been going on with him. Something, he's been turning down quite a few throws, just not looking like the Brock Purdy that we know, who plays with great anticipation, puts the ball in perfect spots, doesn't have the biggest arm, but can still, early this year we saw him slinging quite a few down the field, and we haven't seen that as much of late. And I kind of wonder if something's been going on with him, with his arm, his surgically repaired elbow. Because it just, he's lost grip of the ball in multiple games this year, like where he goes to throw and the ball just slips out of his hand. And to me, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. I have had elbow issues, but not like Brock, not an MCL or anything like that. MCL. Is that UCL? UCL, not MCL. I haven't had that like Brock, but to me, it seems like something strange. There was that game where Brandon Allen had to go in against Green Bay because Brock was dealing with his mystery shoulder injury. And maybe it is his shoulder, maybe it's his whole arm. I really don't know. But to me, when I see the ball slip out of his hands as many times as we have, it makes me wonder if it's something to do with his elbow, where it's impacting, maybe his ability to grip the football. You have like your forearm muscle, because the ball hasn't just slipped out in these crappy weather conditions. We saw it against Minnesota, I believe, and I don't remember if we've seen it any other times this year, but it's just kind of weird because Brock never had that issue in previous seasons. I mean, he did a little bit in cold weather games, and so obviously it becomes a little bit harder to grip the ball in those situations, but it's been a repeated issue that it makes me wonder if something is going on with it. Now, if that is the case, then I don't think, if he's not able to grip the ball well, then it makes me really wonder why he's been out there. This is just speculation. Obviously, he hasn't been on the injury report. They haven't said he's been dealing with anything. So this is me going out there and making assumptions and speculating. But if he is dealing with something like that, where he can't grip football, or he's dealing with shoulder or elbow pain, and it's been all season, then why is he playing? Why limit this offense with something like that when you have guys like Josh Dobbs or Brendan Allen, preferably Josh Dobbs in my opinion, but it's just a little weird. There's something really weird with this season that's been happening, and I don't know. I just don't know what to make of it. The season really, there hasn't been really any big highlight plays. I mean, there were a couple to start the year off, but we don't see explosive plays from this offense. And it's just, I don't know. Hopefully Brock is able to bounce back. There is still an outside shot at the playoffs, but if he's been dealing with something and he still is dealing with something, then I don't think there's a shot at all. And plus they have to depend on other teams to lose. And, you know, when you start doing that, chances are that's not going to happen. We all saw what happened with BYU. They really could have controlled their own destiny, and now they're probably not even going to be in the college football playoff. So I've said this before. I said this on last week's episode, but maybe I'll get into this later. But I really think this team is at a point where now is the best time to move on from Shanahan. Okay, maybe not now, but after the season. And just a really, really quick summary of why I believe that. You get Brock for one more year. You don't have to pay him. You give the new head coach an opportunity to draft a quarterback if he wants to as well. So he can make the determination between a young guy or Brock. And then also some of the older guys that Kyle Shanahan is attached to and has friendships with and doesn't want to let go. New guy's not going to have that attachment. It's a lot easier to let go of those guys and rebuild. And I think this Shanahan system is starting to get figured out. Defenses are keying in on things and maybe on Shanahan's tendencies himself. Who knows? But it hasn't been as successful this year. So bringing in a fresh coordinator who is preferably not from the Shanahan tree, maybe someone that can be a little bit more creative with the players they have. And then now's a good time I think you could still get a good investment too if you, instead of letting Shanahan go, you trade him or something. You figure out, the Bears, see if the Bears are willing to do business for that, or if the Bears call, you have to at least consider it. So with that being said, I didn't get to record this episode as soon after the game as I wanted to, so I'm not going to dig too much deeper. I think at this point we're past that game, looking at Chicago next, which it could easily be an embarrassing loss again for the Niners this season, especially with Jordan Mason and Christian McCaffrey going down probably for the year, and Kevin Givens as well. I do want to say all my thoughts and just all my thoughts and love to Trent Williams and his family going through just crushing tragedy. I can't imagine it has been hard between Pearsall getting shot, Charvarius Ward losing his daughter, and now this. It's, Trent, take as much time as you need, be with your family, your wife, for as much time as needed. I mean, that is something that can last forever. I don't even want to try to imagine what he's experiencing right now or what he went through. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some of the positives for the foreseeable future. I think one kind of positive item is that we're going to see what Isaac Guerendo brings to the table as the first string running back. I mean, I was excited to see what Guerendo can do as a returner after the Niners drafted him, and he hasn't really been used in that role too much. Maybe he has a little bit, but now we get to see him as a featured back. And, some of the coaches on this team, including Shanahan, have said that he's just slightly slower than Raheem Mostert. So maybe they go back to, some of those plays that they liked running with Mostert, and we could see some success with Guerendo there as well. But, it's going to be an opportunity for him to see what he brings to the table as a really young rookie. And so I think that's something to look forward to. Jalen Moore has stepped in for Trent Williams while he's been out, and he's done a really, really good job. I mean, if he keeps this up, he could be the guy that ends up replacing Trent once he decides to retire or move on. Ben Barch, I saw, had a good game. And besides that, with all these injuries, it's a time and an opportunity for these young guys who haven't played a whole lot to come in and show what they can do. And I think that's big. I don't respect teams that go out there and purposely lose and tank like the Utah Jazz are doing right now. So I want to see this team fight all the way through the end of the season. I want to see what all the young guys bring to the table. Maybe some of the other depth pieces who aren't young guys, just guys, who are depth pieces, because we've seen this season how important those guys are. and how important it is to develop young players and the guys behind the starters. When you're very top heavy and don't have a lot of depth, you have a season like this one. So now's a good chance for us to see what those guys bring to the table. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the state of the 49ers right now, and a little bit of a reaction to the Bills game. Not too much, but it has been a few days since then. So I really want to see an improvement this week against the Bears in all aspects, offense, defense, special teams. And yeah, so anyway, thank you for anyone who took the time to listen today. I appreciate every single one of you. If you like 49ers content and hearing my game previews and analyses, go ahead and give me a follow. Give me a subscription on YouTube or follow on Spotify. Give me a like on this video and a comment down below. And let me know what you think the rest of the season is going to look like for the Niners. For me, I don't know. For me, it's just about seeing what all the young guys can do from this point. They're not mathematically eliminated right now. There is still a chance, but I don't think those odds are great. Cardinals are playing well. The Seahawks are starting to get hot. The Rams are always going to hang around, I think. So it's definitely an uphill climb, but I just want to see this team give their best effort during that uphill climb. Anyway, thank you again for listening. This has been Storytime with Chris.